Only time in common conversation I hear people talk about saints, it's usually, yeah, I'm rooting for the New Orleans Saints. Or it's something like, well, I'm no saint. Or she's no saint. If you interviewed the average person on the street about what it takes to be a saint, you get answers like this. It is a person who is always holy. They're always praying. She or he is never upset and is always peaceful. It's a person who never sins. It's someone who always has that kind of beatific smile of the Buddha all the time. If those were God's qualifications for saints, I don't think anyone could manage it. I prefer the more down-to-earth real saints that I can relate to, like St. Jane Frances de Chantal. She was a nun and she lived in the 1600s. She was heading to the convent chapel one day to pray, and there was a young novice in the hall, and she turned to her and said, Sister, why don't you join me in the chapel for prayer? And the young nun answered, Sister, I really don't feel like praying right now. Whereupon St. Jane retorted in her no-nonsense way, Sister, I haven't felt like praying in years. Now, let's go to the chapel and pray. Real saints are human, just like you and me. Many of our greatest spiritual lights didn't start out that way or as anything we would recognize as saints. Abraham was a liar. St. Paul was a murderer and had quite a temper. St. James didn't even believe in his brother Jesus until after the resurrection. St. Francis was a party boy. St. Peter was a coward. You know, there are many stained glass saints in church windows. If those first qualifications we talked about aren't realistic, and the lives of the saints tell us they are not, would these be good qualifications for a saint? Try this on. A person who believes in God. A person who tries with God's help to follow the teachings, takes communion, prays. 3, tries to avoid doing wrong, but they do sometimes, and they feel bad about it and ask for forgiveness. 4, they share her faith or his faith with others by how they live their lives. 5, they try to treat others as their neighbor. 6, they believe in peace, justice, and that every human being is valuable and deserves respect. Does that sound a little bit more reasonable? What you have there are simply the words of your baptismal covenant, the one we say every time we do a baptism. I have lived among you and learned from you for a number of years now, and I know some things about you. Uh-oh. I have watched you pray for each other, and I've watched you pray for complete strangers. I've watched you weep your own tears and with those who are suffering their own tragedy in their lives. I have seen your dedication to the poor and the marginalized in our community and the world. I've seen your love of God put into action in this world season after season after season. As far as I'm concerned, you're the kind of real life saints who are my heroes. Maybe we're not stained glass saints, but maybe we're just plain clear glass saints, which is good. The sun shines through. Maybe you and I will be one of those pictures of saints they carry in future processions. So how about for today, we call each other what we are. During the piece, I want you to address each other as saint. If you don't know their name, introduce yourself, good chance to get to know each other, and then say, peace, St. Margaret. Say peace, St. Carl. Say peace, St. Linda. Try it out. It'll be fun. The Beatitudes talk about real saints. For all their differences, according to the Beatitudes, the saints seem to have something in common. Sometimes real saints are hungry. Sometimes they weep. Sometimes people hate them and exclude them. Real saints try to love their enemies, do good even to those who hate them, blessing and praying for them. They are generous with their worldly goods. Real saints always try to treat others as they would wish to be treated. And real saints aren't always popular. Brazilian Bishop Dom Helder Camara said, "When I ask people for bread to feed the poor, they think I am a saint. When I ask them why the poor are hungry, they think I am a communist." Sojourner Truth in the 1800s just wanted to preach God's freedom for all people, but she received constant abuse for daring to speak because she was both a woman and African American. Oscar Romero of San Salvador was no two-dimensional saint. He simply spoke truth to power, condemning a corrupt government's treatment of the poor and brutalization of its own people. He was assassinated by his own government in 1980 as he was celebrating the Mass. One of my favorite saints, Dorothy Day, was a New Yorker and co-founder of the Catholic Worker Movement. She established a network of houses of hospitality and soup kitchens across the United States and the world to aid the poor and homeless. She was known for her social justice and anti-war activism, advocating for workers' rights and peace. One of my favorite quotes of hers was to a young newspaper reporter. She said, she kind of snapped, "Don't call me a saint. I don't want to be dismissed that easily." I think she was trying to say, I'm not that special. You can do this too. I like coffee, and I love what Dorothy Day said in answer to the question of how she kept going, how she was so tireless in speaking out for the poor. And she said simply, "My strength returns to me with my cup of coffee and the reading of the Psalms." A tough New York saint who grabs a cup of black coffee, spends some time reading the Psalms in the morning, and then gets to work. That's a saint I can relate to. Being a real saint can wear you out. It can beat you down. And you won't look at a thing like those shiny saints in the stained glass. Your fingernails are probably going to be caked with mud, and your face will be streaked with sweat, and you may even become a laughingstock. It seems to me one thing every saint had was the ability to see beyond the surface of this first world to a deeper level, where all the love and forgiveness and prayers they had offered had a tangible reality. They could see beyond the daily grind and injustice and tragedy. They could see their faith was changing the world, as indeed yours is. John Steinbeck, in his classic novel, The Winter of Our Discontent, had a character named Mary who had this ability. I have never forgotten her husband's description of her sleeping. "My wife Mary goes to sleep the way you would close the door of a closet. So many times I have watched her with envy. She loves to sleep, and sleep welcomes her. I wish it were so with me. I have thought the difference might be that my Mary knows she will live forever, that she will step from the living into another life as easily as she slips from sleep to wakefulness. She knows this with her whole body so completely that she does not think of it any more than she thinks to breathe. Thus she has time to sleep, time to rest, time to cease to exist for a little." In our reading today in Ephesians, it says, "With the eyes of your heart enlightened, you may know what is the hope to which he has called you, what are the riches of his glorious inheritance among the saints." If we look with the eyes of our hearts, we can see that hope we are called to, that inheritance which is rightfully ours among the saints. Because there's two kinds of saints. There is what is called the saints triumphant in heaven, and we are the saints militant. That's the old word. Militant, I like that. As St. Paul said in Hebrews 12, we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. This morning, the divide between the two worlds is thin. If we just open the eyes of our hearts, we'd see this church is packed to the rafters with all the good people who have gone before us. Some whose names we remember, some whose faith is known to God alone. They're all around us. They're rooting for you and for me. Their message is simple. You can be a saint too. Matthew R. Brown wrote a poem entitled simply Saints. It goes like this. It is the glory of the church that it cannot name all the saints. It is the glory of the church that it cannot remember all the saints. It is the glory of Christ that we cannot count all the saints. Saints are found behind all the rocks of the mountain. Saints are found among the trees of the wood. Saints hide in blossoms, ride birds, top clouds, follow passages under the earth. They sweep the floors of the universe. They take out the garbage of the cosmos. The seeds they scatter soften and green the hillsides. Leaves open their hands. Joyful beasts wander among the trees, cling to grassy slopes. The faithful cling to the roots of the saints growing up from the ground. Amen.